Let's talk about some of the science and intent behind Event 7 of the Chasing Better Throwdown, programmed by Range of Motion. This is a 3-part event, interval-based with some rest in there. So we've obviously got some ski, some dead ball loading, some GHD sit-ups, and the burpee box jump overs. I think this is going to be a really exciting way to finish the competition. I wanted something that was very spectator-friendly, edge of the seat, nail biter type stuff. And I think the way this is set up, it will be. I think any mistakes are really going to cost athletes because there's not a lot of work here. Any mistakes will really cost athletes. Slow transitions will cost athletes, and any excessive pacing or any weakness in one of these 4 movements is really going to cost athletes. So very little margin for error here, very little room to make mistakes. I think every second will count. Let's look at the breakdown of the movement. So we have 4 movements here. 2 of these movements are hip flexion dominant, that being your ski and your GHD sit-up. Very similar movements, those 2. 2 of the movements are hip extension dominant, that being your dead ball and your burpee box jump overs. One of the hip extension movements is pull-based, which is that dead ball load. One of the hip extension movements is push-based, that being the burpee. So basically the athletes are alternating between flexion dominant movement, extension, flexion, and extension. Each exercise is the opposite of the exercise before it and the exercise after it. And what this will allow is a blood shunting effect, where again, the athletes aren't being limited by cardiorespiratory endurance over these shorter time domains. They're not going to be limited by their localized muscular stamina, because as one muscle group is working, the previous muscle group is resting, and vice versa as we then progress through the 3 rounds. So we get this blood shunting effect where you're working quite hard based on the short amount of time. Shouldn't be any limiting factors here. There's nothing that's going to stop athletes in their tracks. 2 of our movements are external load dependent, that being the ski and the dead ball. So maybe they favor the larger athlete. And 2 of the movements are more internal load dependent, lifting your own body weight. So that being your GHD sit-ups and the burpee box jump overs. So you can see there's this real balance between not only movement types, but also the type of load that you're moving. Again, putting that onus on fast, perfect athletes who aren't going to make mistakes, but also not biasing towards either the strength, a dominant athlete, the bigger athlete, or the more body weight biased athlete, or the cardiorespiratory endurance dominant athlete. There aren't enough reps of any movement here that is going to become a limiting factor, but the combination of movements may become a limiting factor. So you aren't going to hit failure on any one of these. It's an accumulation of fatigue, which may pose the issue. This, of course, is a real good test of recoverability. If you overpace this in the first round, I don't think you're going to catch the athletes who pull away from you, even if it's just by 10 seconds. A 10-second lead here is going to be very difficult to catch after the first piece. So the athletes cannot overpace, because if they do, it's going to be all over for them already. So because you're not able to overpace, because it's going to come down to seconds, this is really going to test their ability to recover in between the events, because you're going to have to go out hard. You're not going to be able to pace this. This really does become a sprint, but a repeat sprint, which is going to be a big test. So if you pace, you'll give away an unrecoverable lead. So to come down to be in the mix to win this one, you're going to have to go hard, but then you're going to have to recover well. So those 2 minutes in between each, you're going to have to do anything you can to be recovering, but it's also going to be a great test of who is able physiologically to recover best. Again, should be a nail biter and hopefully a really good spectator event, this one.